Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final of this series of 8 webinars put on by Incubator Cooperative. Today's webinar is covering member readiness. So what are the things that we need to do with our cooperative or with our project to get it ready to become a cooperative and take on members? We're very fortunate to have with us the Co-op Secretary of Incubator Co-op and otherwise Co-op Guru, Antony McMullen, with us. So I'm going to hand over to Antony, who can introduce himself and take us through his presentation. So thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew. So today's session is about member readiness, sort of getting everyone ready to get started. Can everyone see my PowerPoint presentation? Yep, we've got nodded heads, nodding. Great. So today I'm going to refresh everyone a little bit on the first session. At the start of this accelerator program, I presented on a bit of a co-op 101 and developing cooperative literacy. So I'll do a little bit of a refresher on that, but I won't spend too much time on that. And then we're really going to be talking about getting really clear on purpose of the cooperative, some governance do's and don'ts without going into too much detail, and then some practicalities about how you actually get the thing started up and running. So I'll be able to share this presentation with you afterwards, and I'm using it on a non-commercial basis. And I'd like to underline that this is not financial, tax or legal advice. This is education and development around co-op governance and starting your co-op. So just to refresh on the first session that I did, I think with not everyone online, but with some of you when I visited Adelaide, just thought I'd go back quickly just to re-ground ourselves into the cooperative model. So just remembering that a cooperative is an autonomous association of persons. Those persons might be entities, or those persons might be flesh and blood people like us, united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. And I've recently done a cooperative governance course with the Centre for Cooperatives, which is associated with the University of Saskatchewan in Canada, which I can recommend everyone doing. And one of the points they make is the actual definition, the internationally recognised definition of cooperatives is really important to centre in on, and in some ways just as important, or perhaps even a little bit more important than the cooperative principles themselves, which we certainly focus on, but knowing what you are and meeting member expectations and working for members and being really clear about what a co-op is really important. So when we look at that definition, really think about that in 3 ways: that you're creating member value through contributing to society. So the enterprise itself is contributing to social good. There is economic benefit both to the members and to the broader society. And lastly, there's cultural benefit. And there are all sorts of studies around, particularly in the West, how lonely that we've become, how disconnected that we've become from each other. And a cooperative is a way for people to come together where they've got a common need and they want to establish an enterprise to meet that common need. It also provides a real connection between people, and it's a way of people, to use that terrible Brexit expression, but it is a real way of people taking back control of their lives through establishing an entity to meet their needs and that of the broader community. And also the international cooperative movement has adopted the precautionary environmental approach. So it's bearing in mind that no entity will survive in an environment that is, going downhill, so that there has to be a sense of environmental responsibility in everything that a co-op does. Ethics and values, they are also set internationally by the cooperative movement. Cooperative movement members should be honest and open with each other, should have a sense of social responsibility and care for each other. And cooperatives are based on the values of self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity and solidarity. And the way I like to talk about that is that on the one hand, you've got this sense of self-responsibility, of actually taking responsibility, helping yourself to help others. So getting a sense of solidarity and connection between people. And that's often why the cooperative model can appeal to both conservatives, who are usually a little bit more about pull yourself up from the bootstraps, to those who are a bit more left-wing, of the sense of solidarity and connection between members. The 7 principles which I mentioned are really important to keep in mind when developing your cooperative enterprise. So open and voluntary membership being the first principle. So operating as an inclusive team where you've got long-term collective interests in mind. So you're aligning your interests and thinking about the longer-term success of your business. Democratic member control. So cooperatives succeed when all members participate in transparent decision making, but also where members are given delegated authority to act on behalf of the membership as a whole. And this is really important because not all decisions can be made by all members all of the time. You can make decisions in general meetings, all members can do that, but it's more efficient to allow particular directors in the cooperative or office bearers or people to be able to be delegated decision-making authority. The important thing in your cooperative from a governance point of view is that you document that and you make it really clear. So directors, officers, particular leaders, coordinators, whether they be employees, of course you've just got to be a good employer, but particularly when a startup co-op, often it's a working cooperative and you're all volunteers. So being really clear about what you're doing and what you're not doing, and being clear about what others' responsibilities are is really important. And also making very clear what decisions the board needs to make, what sorts of decisions the whole membership ought to make, and what kind of decisions individuals can make within your cooperative. And as long as you've agreed to that and you've documented that, then you avoid confusion and it's more efficient in terms of decision making. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Economic participation. So members should be putting in to get out. So as members, you decide on how to use the surplus that's created by your cooperative, so the profits. So profits, I'm going to talk a little bit, or surplus, I'm going to talk a little bit more later in the section on finance. But it's important that a cooperative requires some kind of contribution, and it's usually financial, so it might be by way of subscription or shares, where the economic participation is meaningful. It doesn't feel as much like a voluntary association that you can join and think about when you want to. Actually putting in some investment to get something out. Autonomy and independence. It should be a successful business and avoid becoming over-dependent on any particular supplier or customers, and in some cases funders, because there are cooperatives, particularly non-distributing cooperatives, that sometimes get government funding. And the key thing is to keep your autonomy and independence as a cooperative and to be able to move in various directions, is to not become over-reliant on any source of income. It's just about making sure that you haven't put all of your eggs in one basket. Education, training and information, really, really important. That's what we're doing today. But cooperative development and developing cooperative is really a lifelong learning journey. The more I think I know about cooperatives, the more I realise I need to learn. and it's about the governance, it's about the legals, it's all the, everything, tax, all sorts of techie things, but it's also learning about how to work with other people and combining your interests and really getting stuff done. And to do that is a process of, looking into your own reading, education opportunities like that governance course I mentioned before, but also budgeting as a cooperative for learning opportunities for each other. So you're learning things like open book management, for example, where you can have a look at the finances and everyone can understand them. Because as members, you're all owners. So it does require, more understanding of the entity of the business as a whole. Cooperation amongst cooperatives, working with other cooperatives is a way to outperform other businesses in the market. So you've got a way of people, various cooperatives working together, trading with each other, sharing information is a way that you can actually be less isolated as a cooperative and work with other cooperatives, trade with each other for mutual benefit, and also just to really start to crowd out the market in some cases where you can really have a larger footprint than you would just on your own. Lastly, concern for community, the seventh principle, really important to think about the broader community and build good relationships in the community. That has the benefit of really, literally your business having that social focus, doing good in the broader community, but it also builds goodwill, networks, and it helps you build your business. So with cooperatives, each member has 4 hats. The patron, so that's the patron hat where you're getting goods or services, or in the case of a worker cooperative, you're getting good and decent work. You're an owner, where you actually own the business together, all of the members. You're an investor, you're putting in some money, you're investing in your cooperative with the other members. And lastly, you're a community member. You've got that broader interest in the common good of the community. So the investor is creating market power. So members invest in the cooperative to change market dynamics. In terms of patronage, profit rewards patronage. So that surplus goes to getting better goods and services or better work. And sometimes there's the possibility of getting a where the cooperative has made a substantial surplus and then is able to provide a kind of a refund to members, sometimes on an annual basis, and that's to do with people's participation. So in the example of a worker cooperative, it may be based on the amount of work that you've done with the cooperative. If it's a bookshop co-op, it's about how many books you've bought at the bookshop during the year, and some of that surplus can go back to members. That can either be through better goods and services, or it can be literally a payment, a rebate payment that is made to members. As owners, you're making the decisions. You own the business together, and democratic decision making is really, really important. And lastly, creating a community of purpose. So as members, that cultural good I was talking about before, building a common member culture where members belong to the community and seek to share benefits. Cooperative types, just going back, that there's these key parts where you've got either a consumer-owned cooperative, so where people, like the bookshop example I gave before, the consumers are owning the co-op, or an employee-owned co-op where the employees own the co-op. They're generally called primary co-ops. They're very front-facing. Then on a sort of a second tier level, you've got enterprise-owned co-ops. So that could be farming co-ops. It could be a couple of co-ops or more get together to build a secondary co-op, so they're able to work and network with each other together. Then there are tertiary co-ops, which is more about representation, and hybrids, which are around different types of membership membership types coming together around a particular co-op. Does that make sense? Cool. So you've also got to decide whether you're going to be a distributing or non-distributing cooperative. And how you can make that decision is about how important individual reward and financial return is to your everyone that's involved in the co-op, or you know, how important it is to create social impact and good for the group as a whole. So similar to an investor-owned firm or an investor-directed company, distributing cooperative can provide dividends to members, as well as rebates, which I mentioned before, but actual dividends on shares. But those shares remain at the same sort of price. They don't go up and down, and they're only owned by members. So a distributing cooperative can provide that dividend, where non-distributing co-ops can't. A non-distributing cooperative is a not-for-profit type of cooperative. It still has to make profit, it still has to make surplus, but the only way it can distribute that surplus back or distribute that surplus is either through charitable endeavour or by giving that straight back to members through rebates. So that's a way of providing value back to members. So in terms of what you want to do, those are the key questions. There's also tax implications for whether you want a non-distributing cooperative or a distributing cooperative. Only a non-distributing cooperative can register as a charity. So for some people that can be an important thing. And with distributing cooperatives, you simply can't do that. You can't register as a charity, but there are other sort of tax benefits from that. So what about mutuals? Well, a mutual is a company registered under Corps Act that provides its members with no more than one vote. It also has this benefit under tax of a mutuality principle. So members contribute to a common fund created and controlled by them. Any surplus arising from the use of that fund is for the common purpose of members. So it's very similar to a cooperative, but it's generally registered under corps law. And, you know, mutuals are things like RACV, or is not a cooperative, but it is a mutual. So it's member owned. It's one member, one vote. But there's a different kind of road that you can go down in terms of establishing a mutual. And a mutual can enshrine cooperative values and principles in its constitution. But it all, put very simply, a cooperative registers under cooperative national law, and a mutual generally under corporations law. So, purpose. Why are we here? It's really important to get back to purpose when it comes to co-ops. So purpose is around being really clear about your member value proposition, about your business model, and really being clear about putting your money towards that purpose. So investing in the cooperative to meet a member need, and also to have a viable business. So in terms of putting together your member value proposition, who are the members? Who are they? Are they going to be consumers? Are they going to be workers? Are they going to be a combination? What problem does the co-op solve for members? Is there a really compelling need that you're addressing? And thinking about balancing interests. So do all the members have the same needs? Probably not, but if you've got generally an aligned set of interests between your members, it's going to be easier to democratically run your cooperative amongst the members. And think about what the ways the co-op creates value for members. What is the economic value and how is it distributed? So thinking about things like rebates, dividends, charitable distributions, if you're going to do that. And again, the social, cultural, and also environmental benefits. how is, how are you measuring your performance in terms of building that good member culture and connection, contributing to society, and also the kind of economic measurement of economic benefit that members are getting as being part of the cooperative. There are other parts of the cooperative business model to think about. Thinking about the broader community, we're going to talk a little bit more about governance, really thinking about engagement with your members, stakeholders in the community, thinking about the capabilities that you have within your team, the resources that you have available to you, and your cost structure, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later, and your revenue. But we don't have time to go through all of those things today. So in terms of cooperative investment, this is something that my own understanding, I guess, has evolved over time. And something that Anthony Taylor, my good friend from the Business Council of Co-ops and Mutuals, said to me once was that co-ops make money to do good stuff. They're not doing stuff to make money. And this is a really clear distinction between the cooperative model and a whole bunch of other businesses that are really about providing shareholder return and return on investment. This is about doing, making money to do good stuff through the cooperative for member benefit. Co-ops are sort of generally profit minimising, particularly even non-distributing, even distributing cooperatives around, yes, you're making a surplus, but your surplus is to cover costs. It's to allow for risk. It's to make provisions for the future. And eventually, if you have any external investors, it's about paying them back. So it's really about keeping that sort of steady direction of the co-op and not to being beholden to investors. This is really about the key investor is the member. So it's important to balance internal and external investment to most oftentimes balance the investment to internal members. They're putting their money in, they're going to use the business, they're going to get the money back. When thinking about external investors, think about a community of interest. So an example I'll give is Earthworker Cooperative, which is a fantastic cooperative. That's the members of Earthworker are really interested in better work lives for people in environmental interests, in environmental areas. So that is a real kind of community of interest, but it's also geographic. They're basing a lot of their operations in Morwell, where they're wanting to do that work to build a economy that really does need the support in the Latrobe Valley. So external investors can invest, but they can be bought out by members, and that's really should be the aim, I think, in terms of investment. Members can put in by entry fees and subscriptions. Members can buy shares up to 20% of the issued share capital. They can be issued with debentures, which are essentially loans over a particular period of time with interest. You can also issue debentures externally under certain circumstances, and also cooperative capital units, which are a more flexible form of investment, where, for example, though if there are external investors using CCUs, they can receive a return on their investment, for example, when a cooperative becomes quite healthy and profitable. So when we think about it, there's like debt-like or equity-like investments in a cooperative. With debt, you've got debentures, member shares. So a member share will be when members purchase a share or shares, they are to be paid back eventually when the member leaves the cooperative, unless there are some other arrangements. And similarly with debentures, that's really a loan from the member or an external party to the co-op. Cooperative capital units operate a little bit more like equity in that they can be more flexible, and they're probably, in terms of a start, they're not that used, cooperative capital units, but in terms of the startup, when the business is going to be going up and down, probably thinking about cooperative capital units rather than debentures might be the way to go, depending on the business needs. Raising finance, if you go to the Get Mutual website, it's got a great guide on that. So if you're wanting further information, just go there and start reading. It's a fantastic guide. In terms of governance, well, when we're really thinking about it, there's the members, the directors, chair, secretary, sometimes non-member directors, which I'll talk a little bit about, and having a clear set of rules, which is your constitution and a disclosure statement. So who are the members? Again, are they going to be the consumers? Are they going to be the employees? Are they going to be enterprises? So either co-ops owning a co-op or other businesses, for example, small businesses, or are they going to be some kind of hybrid? With members, what are the active membership requirements? So what are you going to be requiring of members? It may be as simple as paying a subscription once a year, or it might be, for example, in a farming co-op, supplying a certain amount of eggs. I've seen, amount of eggs that the co-op is going to receive from farmers. So the active membership requirements can be quite prescriptive, but they should really relate to the business activity. Are there going to be any qualification requirements for members? So when you're putting together the rules, thinking about, if it's a cleaning co-op, people ought to be able to clean. You don't want to, the inherent requirements of membership should be met. So setting those qualifications for membership out is really important. It's open and voluntary membership, but you can set a threshold in terms of the kinds of skills and attributes that members should have. Do you have a one-off entry fee? That can be used as a way of just creating some extra money for the co-op. Also entry fees, later members to in some way provide for more of a contribution for later members to take into account what the original members are putting in. Subscription fees, so it's usually annual fees, or they can be more regular than that. And you can have different types of subscriptions for particular types of services. The application process for members, thinking about that. And the circumstances for when membership can be cancelled. That's usually members aren't meeting their active membership requirements. So being really clear about the primary activities of the co-op, purpose, what members do towards that primary activity, and where there are consequences for when members don't meet that requirement. And look, it's also just about making sure that members are continuing to get benefit. If they're not really in the co-op anymore, it's perfectly reasonable to cancel a membership, and that may not be dramatic in the slightest. People can sometimes just lose interest. So also thinking about the broader community. So in terms of directors, you've got to have a minimum of 3 directors. You must have a chair and you must have a secretary. You can have other office bearers, you can have a treasurer and all those sorts of things. You can also have non-member directors. They can't be the majority on the board, and there always must be more members than non-member directors making decisions in the cooperative. But you can have 1 or 2 non-member directors on the board. Someone external might have legal or tax experience, for example, but also someone that can come into the board that's not as involved in the day-to-day running of the co-op. It's often very beneficial from a groupthink perspective to just have someone that's coming in and just asking questions, saying, oh, why are you doing that? Or have you thought about it in this way? So the important thing to remember with co-op directors is you're always accountable to broader membership. So having things like general meetings, not just the AGM, but having general meetings throughout the year is often a good thing to do. And often where co-ops run into problems is if the directors and the members are disconnected, that there's need constant communication, ways of consulting, ways of informing decision-making by the board. So the board is empowered to get on and do stuff for the members, but it's much more of a two-way process than in a regular company or even a regular not-for-profit association. That member engagement's incredibly important. So as the directors and officers of the co-op, so a director is the elected directors, an officer might be, you might have a CEO, for example. You've got to discharge your duties in good faith, and exercise care and diligence, make sound business judgments, and taking into account cooperative principles. So that's really interesting. That's in the DNA of co-ops. It's got to make business decisions in relation to those cooperative principles. And in a way, it kind of is a little bit like a B Corp. It's not just making decisions for financial return. A co-op's making decisions for social, cultural, and economic benefit for members using the cooperative principles. So it really is about that member benefit and benefiting a broader community. People should appropriately use their position, information, and very importantly, you've got to make sure you're not trading insolvent. So you've always got to check as a board that your cooperative is able to pay all of its debts as and when they become due and payable. And that's such a basic thing, but often people can get a bit carried away and stop looking at the bottom line and thinking about, is this viable? And there are really big fines for breaching any of these sorts of obligations. The role of the secretary is really, really important in a cooperative. There's all sorts of things that you need to do, sort of techie things like making sure the name's on everything, that you're that the registrar of cooperatives, so that'll be in your regulator in each state, is aware of any changes in the cooperatives, making sure that your annual returns, your financial statements and director reports are done, keeping registers, so there's a director's register, there's a member register, there's also a register of cancelled memberships, that any loans, securities, that's your shares, your debentures, CCUs, that you've got registers for all those things. And these things can seem kind of bureaucratic and put it off, but if you've got those things in place, your cooperative is going to run a lot better. When a member asks a difficult question, you've got all of those records in place. It's easy to start up a co-op in terms of your rules through the rules builder at Get Mutual. You can start a distributing cooperative, and you can also get a disclosure statement with your rules. Simply you go in and that will ask you questions to fill in the blanks once you're really clear about what you're on about, or you can establish a non-distributing cooperative with shares or a non-distributing cooperative without shares. So the rules really set out your primary activity, your active membership requirements, your qualifications for membership, all those sorts of things. They're really, really important. And your disclosure statement, you don't need to have one if you're a non-distributing co-op, but it's still good practice to do so. And why wouldn't you want to figure out your estimated costs, what members are required to do, the rights and liabilities attached to any shares, your capital required at the time of formation, projected income and expenditure for the first year, and any information about contracts that the cooperative will enter into. So that's really important, I think, to just have a disclosure statement, whether you're a distributing or a non-distributing cooperative, but you definitely have to have that for a distributing co-op. In terms of practicalities, you need to form a team, a promoter team of a minimum of 5 people. Before you set up your co-op, you might want to establish a bank account as a non-incorporated association, a group of people. You can just go down to a credit union or a customer-owned bank. You finalise your rules and your co-op name. Make sure your name is not too similar to another business. You can look that up on ASIC. Do your formation and disclosure statement. Then you get your rules done, and you get that pre-approved by the registrar of cooperatives in your state. Then the promoters hold a formation meeting. You provide your formation meeting minutes, rules and application to the registrar. The registrar then approves, and then you can get a .coop address. And here are some really good links in terms of organisations that can assist. Business Council of Co-ops and Mutual, the Get Mutual website, Cooperative Bonds, of which I'm a member, the Incubator, of course, we know about that, Co-ops New South Wales, Co-ops WA, Farming Together. There's the Cooperative Enterprise Research Unit, Employee Ownership Australia, which Alan's on the line here at the moment. And each state has its own regulator. Most involved in the accelerator program, South Australian based. So I've just used the example of Consumer and Business Services South Australia. There's all Consumer Affairs Victoria. Here are some great organisations again. Earthworker, check that out for worker co-ops. Oricoop is an interesting investment co-op for organics. Co-ops New South Wales, I mentioned, has some great resources. And there you have it. So I think I've finished just on time, even though we started a little late, and my apologies for that.
Antony, thank you very much. I think we don't really have a heap of time for questions, but that was awesome. If people want to get in touch with you, not just members of the cohort that are getting this video, we're recording it, how should they get in touch with you?
The best way is through the incubator itself. We should be using that platform, but I'm happy to always, anyone ever wants to give me a call, my mobile is 0418 223 517. So it was a good way to get in touch. But yeah, let's meet on the incubator and talk about stuff there. But if there is any last moment questions before we wrap it up, I'm happy to take them, or you may want to wrap it up now, Andrew.
For my purposes, I've got people in the room that I need to now give my attention to, so I'm going to
sure.
But I would welcome and hope that people can get in touch with you through Incubator Co-op and ask the questions that they have. Okay.
No worries.
So thank you everybody for bearing with us and for attending these 8 webinars, particularly to the cohort. I've got another webinar scheduled for next week, which is Tristan Boyd to do the first of 3 parts on his 1-page plan. If you'd like to participate in that, same bat channel, same bat time. Look forward to hearing from you all. Have a great day.